Before the world asks anything of you, there is a quiet moment where your life is decided, not by fate, not by luck, but by how you choose to meet the morning. Stay with me until the end. The final lessons will truly change your perspective. The first truth I want to offer you is simple, but it is not small, and it may ask you to look at yourself more honestly than you're used to. The way you greet your morning is the way you value your life. Before you speak to anyone else, before you scroll, before you rush into obligations, there is a sacred exchange happening between you and yourself, and most of us don't even realize it. We wake up already apologizing to the world for existing, hitting snooze like we're negotiating for more time, grabbing our phones like our worth is waiting in someone else's inbox, letting urgency decide our mood before our feet even touch the ground. And slowly, quietly, day after day, that becomes a message we send to our own spirit: you are last on the list. I didn't always understand this. There was a time in my life when mornings felt like battles. Against time, against expectation, against a version of myself I was trying desperately to outrun. I thought strength meant pushing harder, moving faster, proving more. But what I learned, and this changed the entire trajectory of my inner life, is that true strength begins with presence, not pressure. Your morning is not just a routine, it's a mirror. It reflects how much patience you give yourself, how much compassion you allow, how much respect you believe you deserve. Think about it. If every morning begins in chaos, your nervous system learns chaos as normal. If every morning begins in comparison, your mind learns scarcity. But when you choose, even imperfectly, to begin with intention, something extraordinary happens. You start to reclaim authorship over your own life. Intention doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't require an hour-long ritual or a flawless mindset. Sometimes, intention is simply sitting on the edge of your bed and taking one conscious breath before the world demands anything from you. Sometimes it's choosing water before noise, stillness before stimulation, awareness before reaction. These choices may look small, but spiritually they are monumental. They are declarations. They say, I am here. I matter. My inner world deserves care. I remember the first time I consciously changed my morning. Not because life was calm, but because life was loud. Expectations were heavy, identities were shifting, and I felt stretched between who I was and who I was becoming. And instead of trying to control the outside, I decided to anchor the inside. I gave myself 5 minutes of quiet before anything else. 5 minutes to breathe, to feel gratitude without forcing positivity, to simply exist without performing. And in those 5 minutes, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Grounded. That grounding followed me into conversations, into decisions, into challenges. It didn't remove difficulty, but it softened my relationship with it. And this is the deeper spiritual truth most people miss. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's felt. When you respect yourself, you don't abandon yourself at the first sign of stress. You don't begin your day in self-betrayal. You show up as a witness to your own humanity. Mornings are thresholds. They are doorways between rest and responsibility, between the unconscious and the conscious. And how you cross that threshold sets the emotional temperature for everything that follows. If you run through it, breathless and scattered, your day inherits that energy. If you step through it awake, intentional, even slightly curious, your day carries that steadiness. This is not about discipline for discipline's sake. It's about devotion. Devotion to your becoming. Devotion to the version of you who is trying, even on days when trying feels heavy. You don't need to fix your whole life in the morning. You just need to meet it. Meet yourself honestly. Ask quietly, what do I need today to stay aligned? Some days the answer will be courage. Some days it will be rest. Some days it will be forgiveness. And when you listen, truly listen, you stop living reactively. You stop letting the world tell you who you need to be before you've even checked in with your own heart. That is power. Gentle power. Sustainable power. The kind that doesn't burn you out but builds you up. And here's what's important, because I don't want you to miss this. When you shift your morning, you begin to shift your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who honors their inner life. And that self-image changes how you walk into rooms, how you set boundaries, how you recover from failure. You don't need external validation as desperately, because you've already validated your own existence at the start of the day. That's why mornings are sacred across cultures and spiritual traditions. Dawn has always symbolized renewal, not because the sun rises, but because we get another chance to choose differently. And I promise you this, if you can learn to begin your mornings with respect, even when nothing else feels certain, you will slowly build an unshakable relationship with yourself. And that relationship becomes the foundation for everything else. Your confidence, your resilience, your ability to love and lead and create. Stay with me, because the lessons ahead go even deeper. If this one opens something in you, the next truths will challenge you in ways that may feel uncomfortable but profoundly liberating. And you'll regret missing them if you stop here. This is only the beginning of the journey, the first step inward, the moment you decide that your life is not something to rush through, but something to inhabit fully, consciously and with reverence. Starting the very moment you open your eyes, the second truth arrives quietly, almost invisibly, and that is exactly why it is so powerful. Silence is not empty, it is instructional. And if you have been avoiding it, it's not because silence has nothing to say, but because it has been trying to tell you something you're not ready to hear. We live in a world that confuses noise with progress, activity with importance, constant stimulation with aliveness. And so from the moment we wake up, we reach outward, for our phones, for headlines, for messages, for proof that we exist in someone else's awareness. But before the world speaks to you, something far more intelligent already is your inner voice. Not the loud, anxious one trained by fear, but the quiet, steady one shaped by truth. Silence is where that voice lives, and the reason silence feels uncomfortable for so many people is because it removes distraction. It takes away the background music we use to avoid ourselves. I learned this lesson during a season when everything in my life looked successful on the outside, yet felt fragmented on the inside. My days were full, my calendar packed, my phone constantly buzzing, and yet there was a strange hollowness I couldn't name. I realized I had mastered productivity, but lost intimacy with myself. So one morning, instead of filling the space, I let the space fill me. No music, no phone, just stillness. And at first, it was unbearable. My mind raced, old worries surfaced, unanswered questions demanded attention. But then something softened. Beneath the noise was clarity. Beneath the restlessness was honesty. Silence didn't judge me, it revealed me. That's what silence does. It doesn't punish, it uncovers. Think of silence like a mirror placed gently in front of your soul. At first you might not like what you see, but eventually you recognize yourself again. When you sit in silence, even for a few minutes, you begin to notice patterns, how quickly your mind reaches for control, how often you replay the past or rehearse the future, how rarely you allow yourself to simply be. And in that noticing, awareness is born. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. Silence teaches you how to respond instead of react. It trains your nervous system to rest in presence rather than urgency. Spiritually, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of truth. It is where intuition grows stronger, where fear loses its grip, where wisdom doesn't shout but waits patiently to be invited. Every ancient tradition understood this. Monks, mystics, seekers, they all withdrew not because they feared life, but because they wanted to hear it clearly. And you don't need a monastery or a mountain to practice this. You just need willingness. Willingness to pause before you perform. Willingness to sit with yourself without editing, without fixing, without escaping. When you start your morning in silence, you are telling your soul, I am listening. And once you listen, your life begins to speak differently. Decisions become cleaner. Boundaries become clearer. You stop outsourcing your worth to the loudest opinion in the room. You begin to trust yourself, not because you know everything, but because you are connected to something deeper than fear. Silence is where you remember who you are before the world told you who to be. And this is important, so hear this carefully. Clarity does not come from more information, it comes from less noise. Many people are overwhelmed not because they lack answers, but because they are drowning in input. Silence filters the unnecessary. It sharpens what matters. It aligns you with your inner compass. And alignment changes everything. You start to notice that you don't need to rush as much. You don't need to explain yourself as often. You don't need to prove your worth through exhaustion. That calm confidence, that grounded presence is born in silence. And here's the paradox: the more time you spend in silence, the more powerful your voice becomes when you speak. Because now your words are rooted. They carry intention. They come from awareness instead of impulse. If this truth is stirring something in you, stay with me, because the lessons ahead build directly on this foundation. And missing the next ones would mean missing the moment where awareness turns into action. Silence is not a luxury, it is a necessity for anyone who wants to live consciously. Even a few minutes a day can rewire how you experience stress, how you process emotion, how you connect with others. In silence, you learn that you are not your thoughts, you are the witness of them. And that realization is freedom. When fear arises, you don't drown in it, you observe it. When doubt appears, you don't obey it, you question it. When desire calls, you don't chase blindly, you discern wisely. Silence creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies choice. Choice is where personal power lives. This is why silence feels threatening to a world addicted to distraction. Because silence wakes you up. It reconnects you to your inner authority. It reminds you that peace is not something you earn after success. It is something you practice before it. And once you experience that peace, you no longer build your life from desperation. You build it from alignment. Stay with this. Don't rush past it. Let it sink in. Because the next lessons will ask you to act from this awareness, to move from inner listening to outer discipline. And if you skip ahead without mastering this step, everything else will feel forced. Silence is the ground. Everything else grows from here. And if you allow it, if you truly allow yourself to listen, you will never feel lost in the same way again. The third truth asks for honesty because it dismantles one of the biggest illusions we've been sold. That discipline is harsh, restrictive, or somehow opposed to freedom, when in reality, discipline is one of the purest forms of self-love you will ever practice. Discipline is not about punishment, rigidity, or forcing yourself into a life you resent. It is about devotion to the person you are becoming. Even when the person you are today feels tired, uncertain, or unmotivated. We often wait to feel inspired before we act, believing that motivation should arrive first like a blessing. But life doesn't work that way. Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is loyal. Discipline shows up when inspiration disappears. And this lesson didn't come to me in moments of triumph, but in moments of resistance. Mornings when I didn't want to try again. Days when self-doubt whispered that consistency was pointless. Seasons when progress felt invisible. I used to believe that if something was meant for me, it would feel easier. But what I learned instead is this: what is meant for you often requires you to grow into it, and growth demands commitment long before it delivers confidence. Discipline is how you keep promises to yourself when no one is watching. It is how you say, "I trust you," to your future self. Every time you choose to show up, to practice, to learn, to care for your body, to honor your boundaries, you are depositing trust into your own inner bank. And that trust compounds. Slowly at first, then all at once. Think of discipline like roots beneath a tree. You don't see them. They don't get applause. But without them, nothing stands when the storms arrive. Most people want the visible results, the strength, the clarity, the success, without tending to the invisible work. Discipline is that invisible work. It's waking up on days when no one will praise you. It's choosing rest when hustle is glorified. It's saying no to distractions that feel good now, but cost you later. Spiritually speaking, discipline is alignment between intention and action. It's when your values stop being ideas and start becoming habits. I remember a period in my life when I felt disconnected from my own confidence. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I wasn't consistent. I knew what to do, but I wasn't doing it regularly enough to trust myself. And that erosion of self-trust is subtle but devastating. You start doubting your own word. You start negotiating with your own goals. So I decided to rebuild that trust. Not through grand gestures, but through small, disciplined acts. I committed to showing up even when I felt unsure, especially when I felt unsure. And over time, something profound happened. My inner dialogue changed. The voice that once said, "Can I do this?" became, "I know I'll show up." That shift is everything. Discipline doesn't drain you, inconsistency does. Discipline doesn't steal joy. Self-betrayal does. When you keep breaking promises to yourself, even tiny ones, you carry that weight everywhere. But when you honor yourself through disciplined action, you walk lighter. You move with integrity. You no longer need external validation because you validated yourself through consistency. This is why discipline is not rigid, it's compassionate. It understands that you won't always feel strong, so it builds strength for you in advance. It understands that emotions fluctuate, so it creates structure to support you when they do. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. And here's what most people don't realize. Discipline truly creates freedom. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from indecision. Freedom from constantly starting over. When you know you will show up for yourself, you stop wasting energy on guilt and self-criticism. You channel it into growth. If this truth is landing deeply, stay with me, because the lessons ahead take this discipline and elevate it into gratitude, awareness, and purpose. And you don't want to miss the point where effort transforms into inner peace. Discipline also teaches patience, something our fast-paced world desperately lacks. It reminds you that meaningful change is rarely loud. It happens quietly, through repetition, through faith in the unseen. Like water shaping stone, disciplined effort reshapes your identity over time. You don't wake up one day suddenly disciplined. You wake up one day realizing you no longer argue with yourself the way you used to. You act with less friction. You choose alignment more naturally. And that is spiritual maturity. Discipline is how you honor your time on this earth. It's how you say, my life is worth tending to, not just when things are exciting, but when they are ordinary. Especially when they are ordinary. Because ordinary days lived with discipline build extraordinary lives. And don't confuse discipline with perfection. Perfection is fragile. Discipline is resilient. Discipline allows room for rest, forgiveness, and recalibration. It's not about never falling, it's about returning, again and again. Returning to your values, returning to your practice, returning to yourself. And every return strengthens your character. This is why disciplined people don't fear failure the way others do. They trust the process. They trust themselves to keep going. They know that consistency will carry them further than bursts of intensity ever could. As you absorb this, remember this gently. The next lessons will ask you to soften where discipline has strengthened you, to balance effort with gratitude and awareness. Stay until the end, because this journey is designed to unfold step by step. And missing the later truths would mean missing how all of this integrates into a life that feels not just successful, but deeply aligned. Discipline is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who you already are, steadily, consciously, and with love. The fourth truth enters gently but carries enormous weight because it speaks to a tension almost everyone feels but few know how to resolve. The pull between ambition and peace, between wanting more and appreciating what already is. Gratitude is often misunderstood as complacency, as if being thankful means shrinking your dreams or silencing your hunger for growth. But the truth is the opposite. Gratitude is what stabilizes ambition, so it doesn't consume you. Without gratitude, ambition becomes restless, anxious, and endlessly dissatisfied. It keeps moving the finish line, convincing you that fulfillment lives somewhere ahead, somewhere else, somewhere you are not yet. I felt that restlessness deeply, that constant forward lean, that subtle panic of feeling behind even while achieving, that voice that whispers, once you get there, then you feel enough. But here's what gratitude taught me, slowly and humbly: if you don't learn to anchor yourself in what is, no amount of what's next will ever feel like home. Gratitude is not a pause on progress, it's the ground beneath it. Think of ambition as fire, powerful, transformative, necessary, and gratitude as the heart that contains it. Without the heart, the fire burns everything down, including you. With it, the fire warms, nourishes, and sustains. When you begin your day with gratitude, you are not telling life that you're finished growing. You are telling your nervous system that you are safe enough to grow without fear. And safety changes everything. It allows you to pursue your goals without desperation, to work without losing yourself, to dream without resenting your present. Gratitude brings you back into your body, back into this moment, back into a relationship with life that is rooted instead of rushed. I remember mornings when my mind would immediately jump ahead to deadlines, expectations, unfinished plans, and my body would follow, tightening, bracing, preparing for a future that hadn't even arrived yet. And then I began a small practice, almost embarrassingly simple. Before engaging with what I wanted, I acknowledged what I already had: a breath that came easily, a body that carried me, a chance to begin again. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative, but something softened. Gratitude slowed time just enough for me to arrive inside my own life. And once you arrive, ambition stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a calling. Spiritually, gratitude is an act of alignment. It tunes you into abundance rather than lack, presence rather than absence. When you are grateful, you stop scanning your life for what's missing and start recognizing what's meaningful. That recognition doesn't make you smaller, it makes you steadier. It allows you to take risks from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. And here's what's profound. Gratitude doesn't erase pain or struggle, it reframes them. It reminds you that difficulty and grace often coexist. That you can be in the middle of becoming and still honor who you already are. When gratitude becomes part of your morning mindset, comparison loosens its grip. You stop measuring your timeline against someone else's highlight reel. You stop letting other people's success diminish your own progress. You understand deeply that your path is not late, it is alive. Gratitude gives you that clarity. It grounds you when ambition tries to pull you too far ahead of yourself. It whispers, "You are here. This matters. Don't abandon this moment in the name of a future that needs you whole." And if this resonates, stay with me, because the lessons ahead build directly on this grounding. They show you how awareness turns into conscious thought and purposeful action, and missing them would mean missing how ambition finally learns to breathe. Gratitude also changes the way you relate to effort. Instead of seeing work as proof of worth, you begin to see it as expression of purpose. You don't work to fill a void, you work to give shape to what already feels meaningful. That shift is subtle, but it is life-changing. It's the difference between exhaustion and fulfillment, between striving and devotion. Gratitude reminds you that success is not just about accumulation, it's about appreciation. About being awake to your life as it unfolds, not just when it impresses you, but when it teaches you. Even setbacks begin to feel different. They still hurt, but they no longer define you. You can be grateful for the lesson without glorifying the pain. That discernment is maturity. That is emotional and spiritual intelligence. And gratitude, practiced daily, builds it quietly. It trains your mind to notice beauty without denying hardship, to hold ambition without letting it harden you. When you wake up grateful, you carry that energy into conversations, decisions, and challenges. You become less reactive, more receptive, less frantic, more intentional. Gratitude slows the internal noise just enough for wisdom to surface. And wisdom doesn't rush. It waits for you to notice it. This is why gratitude is not a passive emotion, it is an active choice. A discipline of the heart. Some mornings it will feel natural. Other mornings it will feel like work. But on those mornings especially, it matters most. Because gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to let imperfection blind you to what is still sacred. And as you move forward, as your goals expand, as your responsibilities grow, gratitude will be what keeps you company, connected to yourself. Without it, ambition can make you lonely, disconnected, perpetually unsatisfied. With it, ambition becomes service, expression, contribution. You don't just succeed, you savor. You don't just arrive, you inhabit. And remember this as we continue. The next lessons will challenge how you think, how you choose, and how you define purpose itself. Stay until the final points, because this grounding is essential for what comes next, and skipping ahead without it would be like trying to build a future without a foundation. Gratitude is not the end of the journey. It is the place you stand so you don't lose yourself while walking it. The fifth truth asks you to look inward with courage, because it reveals a quiet power you've been using every day. Whether consciously or not, your thoughts are seeds, and your life is the garden they grow into. Nothing appears in your world fully formed. It begins as a thought, repeated, believed, and eventually embodied. We often underestimate this because thoughts feel invisible, fleeting, harmless. But invisibility does not mean insignificance. The thoughts you entertain each morning are like instructions whispered to your subconscious, shaping how you see yourself, how you interpret setbacks, how you respond to opportunity. I learned this not through theory, but through experience, through noticing how two people could face the same challenge and walk away with completely different outcomes.